with the February rendition of the Oregon City Business Alliance Forum. We're honored and pleased and excited to have our neighbors to the west today, the mayor, the city council president, and the city manager for West Linn, who will be kind of sharing their vision, accomplishments during the last few years, the challenges that many of which we have in common with our folks here in Oregon City. And remember last month we had Oregon City Manager Tony Conkle share with us the goals, the opportunities, but also the challenges that we face here in our community. A lot of them are very similar and very common in West Linn. We share the Willamette River together. We share two mills, each with an amazing view of the Willamette Falls, which they'll be getting into much more detail as to what's taking place on the PGE land for public access over on their side of the river. Tolling, probably the biggest issue that we share in common right now. And I was excited when I heard the mayor's from West Linn, Rory's financial analysis on what the actual cost for administration is from the present ODOT program for tolling. It'll actually just dumbfound you when you hear how much money is going into coffers that produces no infrastructure improvements whatsoever. We're pleased to see that the county commissioners have now stepped up and asked that ODOT go ahead and build the third lane. If you remember at the last meeting that we've heard from them in Gladstone, they were still going to go ahead and toll the George Abernathy Bridge, but we weren't going to get the third lane on either side, which didn't seem to make a lot of sense to a lot of us who attended that meeting. But anyway, they're going to share with us their vision for 2024 and beyond. So I'm going to share a little bit of information about the mayor. Rory Bialostosky. Did I say that correct, Rory? Okay. It's an interesting name. Is a longtime resident of West Linn's Willamette neighborhood, elected to the city council in 2020 at the age of 21, and mayor at the age of 23. Rory is the youngest mayor in West Linn's history and one of Oregon's youngest elected officials. He believes strongly in the power of collaboration and working together to better serve our community. Then we also have City Council President Mary Baumgartner. She is in her final year of her first term on the West Linn City Council, having grown up on a farm in rural Clackamas County and having lived in both West Linn and Oregon City. Mary has a strong sense of the people and needs of the area. After leaving a career in K-12 special education with the West Linn Wilsonville School District in 2019, she pivoted her community service to municipal government, resulting in a successful bid for the council in 2020. And then John Williams, who's the city manager, he came to the city of West Linn in 2017 as their community development director, deputy city manager, and served as a city manager since September of 22. He has over 25 years of Oregon governmental experience, including at the Oregon Department of Transportation, the city of Canby, and at Metro. And I remember, John, you spoke to the Oregon City Business Alliance before, a few years back, when you were a representative at Metro. We appreciate that. I'd like to thank the city of West Linn as being our sponsor for this month's event. So if you give them a hand, that'd be great. And we have some elected officials with us today. Clackamas County Commissioner Mark Scholl, over there. Tessa Donnell with Clackamas River Water. And I'm sorry, I don't have your name tag right in front of me. Well, you need to become a member. Sherry French with the Clackamas River Water. Now, Tessa joined last month because she saw the value in being a member of the Oregon City Business Alliance. So Sherry, before you leave today, we'll want to meet and have a little conversation, okay? So you two can have a name tag. Did I miss any elected officials? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, well, former County Commissioner Sonia Fisher. Yes. All right, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rory. Well, actually, all three of them are going to come up. Rory, Mary, and John. because their presentations somewhat overlap with one another. And rather than have them come up individually, they thought it might be more effective to just pass the mics back and forth amongst themselves. Again, at the end, we'll do Q&A. The blue cards on your table are for the questions, and we will have someone from the Oregon City Business Alliance come around and pick those up. The gray cards on your table are for forum topics, or just let us know how you felt about today's event. Did you like it? Was it informative? Ways we can improve upon it? And just kind of give us direction. We're here to serve you. Again, we're very thankful for you being here, and I'm truly looking forward to getting some timely and accurate information. So, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today. So we have a presentation to give. We have just some general talking points. We're just going to basically go over the priorities of the city. I thought I'd talk a little bit about what the latest is with 205 tolling and tolling in general. I know that's relevant to everybody. I just went to the legislature yesterday and had some meetings on the topic. So, and then one thing I'll focus on specifically is we just partnered with some cities and a labor organization to produce a poll on transportation funding and tolling. So we'll talk a little bit about the results and kind of go into some of the specific priorities. So you all know us. We want to introduce ourselves again, but we'll just, perfect. Go. I'm Rory Bialostosky, the mayor. With me is Council President Mary Baumgardner and our city manager, John Williams. And we're glad to be here with our partners in Oregon City. So thank you. Yeah, you can just go to the topic. So these are our 2024 West Linn City Council priorities. We had a goal-setting session at the beginning of the year, and so we'll just go through them. First one, oppose 205 tolling, and that's common among all of us here in Oregon City, West Linn, and Clackamas County. Just a sneak peek at the results of our poll. Clackamas County voters, 91% oppose the concept of tolling in the metro area. So that was something that we're really concerned about and going to work on. Should we go through each of the priorities or just? Yeah, we'll just, because some of them aren't going to be touched on. Second, we're working really hard to explore with the community the idea of building an indoor rec center. It's something that we've heard from a lot of folks that they're interested in seeing. Obviously, we're going to talk more about that later on. And then supporting our police review and recommend committee is something that's important to us. We created that in December of 2022 via an ordinance, and that it's a group of community members who review complaints that come in to our police department and make sure that those get thoroughly investigated and then provide recommendations to city management about how to handle those complaints. So it's just an added accountability check with community members, which is cool. They get to see evidence that we don't get to see as council members, like body cam footage and things like that, to really thoroughly look into that. And it's unique among cities. I think we're the only city with a police review and recommend committee like this. So if Oregon City is interested in that, can share more information with you. We're working on a water system master plan that's going to come in shortly. I think we're reviewing it next month to define what the needs are of our water system, which is an important component. And one thing about that is that our two cities, Oregon City and West Linn, have the 5% rate cap. So the city with that, Oregon City has 3%. John Lewis pointed me to that. So with the rising cost of construction and water projects, with like asphalt, for example, rising, tripling in the last couple of years, how do we make sure that we're with that 5% cap, sustainably planning for the future and investing in projects? So we're going to learn more about what the total cost projections are and have to have a conversation about that. And just quickly, we're going to talk more about our visioning projects. West Linn Waterfront, working on that. Vision 43, we've got more slides on that later. Transit and transportation, we're working with TriMet on. Sustainability initiatives are a big part of what we do at the city, and then diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging also. We have our city manager can talk about the work he's been doing with staff on that. So we'll go to the next slide. So 205 tolling. Just quickly, talking about where we're at. As you heard earlier, the third lane was canceled. due to rising costs. And basically, prior to the cancellation, the whole messaging from ODOT was, hey, congestion's going to be reduced because we're adding this third lane with tolling, and it'll go from 14 hours to 2 hours. You probably heard that. And so that was kind of the messaging and the big sell point is reducing congestion, but that's now all out the window. So now the current plan is placing tolls at Abernathy Bridge with no road improvements around the bridge, or specifically no capacity improvements. So this type of thing has never been done before with tolling without adding capacity. So we're concerned about it. So because of that cancellation, there's going to be later this year a supplemental environmental assessment. And that's basically the document that spells out where our impact's going to be with diversion traffic, which is a big concern, where our, what compensation is going to be offered to cities and counties to compensate for the increase in traffic. And last time, the old environmental assessment said for West Linn we'd get one crosswalk enhancement in Willamette to compensate for a 100% increase in traffic. And so that's now out the window, but they're going to be going at it again, doing the supplemental, and they've told us no changes will be made to the criteria for what constitutes an impacted intersection. So we're going to be working really hard to evaluate, pick it apart, and make sure that we're advocating for ourselves. And I know Oregon City also did a good job with hiring consultants and partnering on the last round. And our work together really led to the tolling pause with the county, city leaders, and our staff and technical work. And so we're going to be looking at that again. And they've said 30 days to comment, no extensions already. So that was something I brought up with legislators yesterday. So that'll be coming out later this summer. And then now going to the tolling poll results. So just a few of them are highlighted on the screen, but I also can talk more in depth about if anybody has a question or wants to raise their hand. But basically, I'll just go over the key findings that we found. And this was just for background. The cities of West Linn, Oregon City, Tualatin, and Wilsonville, along with UFCW, the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 555 sponsored a survey with DHM, reputable firm, to make sure that we're asking questions in an appropriate manner and not being biased and making sure to get the full picture. Because I realized that never before had there been done a statistically valid poll on transportation funding. And I was kind of thinking yesterday, talking to legislators, when somebody asked me, are you surprised by that? And I'm like, well, I'm not naive, but you'd think back in 2017 when they're planning this huge overhaul of how we fund transportation, they would research public opinion, but it didn't happen. And so we did that finally in 2024, and some of the key findings are that voters are concerned about traffic congestion. 81% of folks are concerned about that. But then when you ask about tolling in particular as a way to pay for that, and voters are opposed to that. So 76% overall across Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas County. It's important to note we polled not just Clackamas County, but Multnomah and Washington County to kind of broaden the impact of the results into other legislative districts. So opposition highest in Clackamas County at 91%, but then Washington County, 76% are opposed, and Multnomah County, 69% opposed. So then when we talked about the specific projects, so we got kind of 3 proposals on the table right now that we polled. The 205 project had 64% opposition, Abernathy Bridge tolling. More on that in just a second. 71% opposed RMPP, which is tolling all lanes of 205 and I-5 all the way up and down the corridor. But then interestingly, when we asked voters in Washington and Multnomah County specifically about, well, we asked everybody this, but tolling on Highway 217 and 26, that's something that hasn't been talked about a lot, but it's actually under study. There's studies been published kind of recommending that they do that, tolling at 217 and 26. So we thought, what would happen if we asked Washington County and Multnomah County voters what they thought about that, kind of impacting their district, their county and cities. And not surprisingly, when you asked about 205 at Abernathy Bridge here in Clackamas County, 53% of Multnomah County voters and 64% of Washington County voters were in opposition. But then when you asked about tolling on 217 and 26, there was a huge shift, 20% more, basically. So 80% of Washington County voters then opposed it, compared to earlier 64% opposing. So basically the message is to legislators and everybody is, predictably, if voters perceive or folks perceive that tolling is going to impact their daily lives, they're concerned about it, but if it's farther away, they're not as concerned about it. So hopefully some legislators out in Washington County, one in particular who's pretty powerful, and just others in Portland area will take notice of that, because it's probably highest opposition here at 91% because our folks know about that and are more in tune. Let's see, what else? Let me just look here real quick to make sure only 13% of voters have provided any feedback to ODOT on tolling proposals, and almost 40% have heard nothing about them up to this point. And to pay for projects, this was an interesting point. We asked about some alternatives because our feeling is that if we're going to oppose tolling, which we have to this point, we should have some way to pay for the projects or some feeling about a better alternative to it, because we recognize there is a need for financial investment in infrastructure. And existing funding streams, specifically gas tax and increasing reg fees, polled better than tolling with voters. So the question really is it worth it when you consider the significant startup costs and administrative costs and the political capital it'll take to execute this? Opposition to registration fee increases for all vehicles polled at 62% compared to tolling at between 76 and 90% opposition. And increasing vehicle registration fees for electric vehicles had majority support, which was interesting. So anyway, I think we should have said enough on the tolling topic with the poll. And any other comments from the panel here?
So I just want to add one thing, or maybe two things. We had to spend money to do this poll, right? There's the lack of quantitative information down in Salem about what people in our region actually think about tolling. This all came from discussions. Our elected officials are working super hard on this tolling issue. And we realized that we weren't able to go down to Salem and tell folks, especially legislators from other regions, what the thinking is on tolling and what people are feeling about it. So we all came together. We appreciate Oregon City and the other partners who contributed to this. But it's just an example of the work that we're all having to do. And we're not getting paid back by ODOT. This is an issue that Council President Baumgartner's brought up before. We have to spend money on transportation consultants. We have to spend time and effort to lobby in Salem and lobby ODOT about this project. We're not getting funded to analyze this work. The environmental assessment that the mayor brought up is going to be 1,000+ pages long. I don't have a staff person with the expertise to work on that or the time. Tony, I think, will confirm that there's been a lot of staff time spent on this project. We're going on how many years now? So it's just been a grind. And there's a lot of resources at the ODOT side, not so many resources on our side. So we appreciate the partnerships, not just with Oregon City, but also with the business community. We have been very effective lobbying when we all get together and have the same kind of message, and people appreciate that. I think this is a real place. We're going to talk in the last slide about partnership opportunities. This is a place where the business community can be incredibly important in the lobbying efforts, and we appreciate that partnership. So let's just put that thought on the table for the end.
Anything else?
I can't improve on what's already been said on the tolling subject.
A couple more things I want to highlight real quick. One of the things we hear is, well, folks can just take transit instead to avoid tolls, and just change their patterns. The city of Wilsonville proposed a really smart question to ask voters. It says, considering your routine travel needs, would public transit provide a viable alternative to traveling on roads that ODOT's proposing to toll? And 82% said no across the region. So we know that if tolling happens, there needs to be a substantial, probably hundreds of millions of dollars investment in transit to get it up to so folks can actually use it in a way that makes an impact for them. Because that shows that's not happening right now. People don't feel that it'll be helpful. And then one of the interesting things that we did was asking people, kind of putting the statements that ODOT has made in support of tolling before voters, and putting the statements that, kind of the con statements that others have stated in opposition to tolling. And it kind of, I think it shows voters are really smart. People who aren't as engaged in the process, kind of sometimes we feel like, we kind of are in the room and know a lot more about tolling. But when you ask voters, for example, a statement, putting the statement that tolls as a pro, and so does this statement, is this a good reason to support tolling or a bad reason? This was one. Tolls discourage people from driving during the busiest times, helping to reduce travel time. That is the main argument that folks have made related to congestion relief. And only 28% said that's a good reason to support tolling. 70% said it's a poor reason to support tolling. So people understand what's happening, and I was really glad to see that. And when we asked about con statements, related to placing an unfair burden on low-income folks, for example, 83% said it was a good reason to oppose tolling. So anyway, I think I'll close the tolling topic there and turn it over to Council President to talk about our next subject, which is our indoor rec center.
We'll do Q&A at the end, so think about the questions. Ask
Well,
us later.
Thank you, John. And I would like to just take a brief moment to thank and recognize our Mayor, Bialostosky, who I met when we both were at West Linn High School. I was working and he was a student, and I'm so proud to serve with him, and I think it's just incredible to have a young person in our government. And so everybody, thank you. Not to embarrass you, sorry. So about our rec center, West Linn has long had community engagement and community requests for a rec center. People have been interested in a pool, and we have explored that, and so far that isn't an active part of the current conversation. It's a potential, but we're really focusing on a very multi-use community recreation center that can achieve the goals of many generations of people, not just serve one small demographic. So to that end, in the late teens, a Parks Master Plan was passed, and it included feasibility for a rec center and discussion. So we've recently restarted those, and our new Parks Director, Megan Big John, is very excited to continue the work. We are now going into phase 2, which will include steering committee workshops and other public engagement opportunities so that people can really have input on what this rec center looks like, and we're very excited about it. And if anyone has questions, we'll do Q&A at the end, but so there is some community outreach polling, and we'll continue on with our conversation. Do you mind moving to the next slide?
Got it.
Oh, you have the... Oh. There we go. Well, skipping backwards a little bit to the conversation about transit that we were just having about tolling, one of the original points I made to ODOT when they came to speak to the council was, is it under consideration at all, the state of transit and access to transit, specifically with respect to anticipated diversion, traffic, and challenges of people not being able to afford to drive? Because if we push people off the roads to aid in congestion, we have to give them alternatives. So I don't know how much that request has had an effect, but we are now being offered some proposed new routes from TriMet for transit services. And it's probably hard to read those slides. Do you want to add a little?
Sure, I'd be happy to. This has been a city council goal in West Linn for a number of years. Oregon City has a very different kind of transit situation than West Linn does. We have multiple centers. We don't have a transit center per se. We are lucky to get lines passing through West Linn that stop. And I think the council's been very consistent about advocacy on transit. Is really, you're going to toll the freeway that goes right through the middle of West Linn. They demolished parts of West Linn to build the freeway, separated the town, leaving us with not a lot of options. And we think at least some transit service is really important. What you're looking at here, and all of this is available online, TriMet has announced a bunch of changes for later in the year. These changes would start in August if the board approves them. Their board meeting is March 11th, I believe. And we're really excited. There's one particular part that's very exciting to us. Shows over here on this diagram. This is a new service here that would start in our Willamette district, go up Salamo Road, past our city hall, past some schools, turn left on Rosemont, go all the way to Lake Oswego, connect to the new rec center they're building at the Lusher Farm area, and then go to downtown Lake Oswego. So providing a transit service for folks up on top of our hill is really important, and it's going to connect to some key destinations. It'll be right on the site of our rec center if we're able to build one. Also, there's a line 76 that is proposed to change. It's going to connect to Tualatin and Oregon City, and originally it was going to stop literally, it was going to stop on our exit ramp on the freeway and then get back on the freeway and go to Oregon City. Sensibly to provide fast service between Oregon City and Tualatin. We get that, and we know that's important for you folks too. Now what it's going to do is going to get off at 10th Street, and it's going to serve our Willamette Falls Drive area and end up in Oregon City. So it's going to connect our two communities better too, which is important. There's also, I'm not the Oregon City manager, but there are service changes proposed in the Oregon City area. So if you haven't looked at transit service proposals from TriMet, I'd urge you to do that and make sure that you're supporting them if you are, because we think this is an important piece of the puzzle.
Thank you. And I think we can go on to the next slide. To our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It's very important work that we have been embarking on in the last 5 years, longer, about 5 years. And some of the programming that has been included in that is the observation of Juneteenth and Juneteenth celebration sponsored in partnership by the city and community organizations. There are authors' presentations at the library, and we're also planning some art installations with our Arts and Culture Commission coming up soon. Another subject that's near and dear to my heart is tribal engagement, which since I first ran for public office, one of my goals was to do what we could, and there was already efforts being done, but improve our tribal literacy and our ability to communicate and relate and elevate voices of the tribal communities. And through part of that work, I have embarked on a program at Portland State's Institute for Tribal Government, Tribal Relations Certification Program, which took me to Washington, D.C. just 2 weeks ago for the National Congress of American Indians, which was really fascinating to see the National Congress and all of the leaders from tribes and bands, and whether they're recognized or not by the federal government, they have their own sovereignty and watch their work and listen to what they're doing. So hopefully we can continue that partnership work, which is so important at our location here at the Falls. I know that's also important for Oregon City too, but there's so many wonderful opportunities that I see that we can elevate and create better access to this area that was so important to tribes and bands historically since time immemorial. And let's see, there's a couple other items on this slide that maybe you might want to touch on, John.
Happy to. This is an important area for us. Our belief is the more people that are involved in what we do, the more people that feel safe and comfortable, more people that feel welcome and included in everything we do as a city, the stronger we're going to be. We are starting inside out in some ways. We are doing a lot of staff training on this. We have a first-of-the-kind certificate program in cultural competency that we're doing in partnership with Chemeketa Community College. So we have employees going through this certificate program in groups of 15 or 20 at a time. We're hoping to get everyone in our organization to be able to complete this. And what's cool about it is they get their certificate. It's something that's on their transcript at Chemeketa Community College. They can take it wherever they go in their next employment. Of course, we hope they stay. We have a couple of folks here. I didn't recognize some of our staff that are here. Our finance director, Lauren Breithout, and our city recorder, Kathy Molesky, have joined us here today. Huge part of our team. You guys are in the current cohort. So it's an exciting program where we've also developed. We have a team of employees from all across our organization that are serving as sort of a steering committee for this internally. They've developed a mission and values statement for us as an organization, which we're just about to adopt. And it's going to talk about how we work as a workforce and also how we engage with our community. So we think it's an important part of our work moving forward. I think those are the bullet points. Any more from? Okay. Again, we have, so here's the placeholder for the maps, which didn't make it in before today. But I have the next part of this. We're talking about two big visioning programs in the city of West Linn. Just describe them really briefly to you. And I think when I describe them to you, you'll understand why we're doing it and what the need is. The first is what we're calling our waterfront area. This is, if you can picture, and you guys are perfectly positioned to understand where this is, because if you go up on the bluff and look across, you can see the whole thing. Picture the area in the West Linn waterfront from the Arch Bridge all the way down almost to Willamette Park. So underneath Willamette Falls Drive, between Willamette Falls Drive and the river, is really the area we're talking about. This is an area that has been a key part of West Linn's economy for 100 years. And a key part of our natural environment for thousands of years. But it's a place that almost no one in our community has ever visited. It's extremely hard to get to. There is heritage industrial infrastructure all over it. There are PGE facilities that are not accessible to the public. So it's this amazing place that you all can see more than people in West Linn can see. We often tell people, or when we're assembling a group, we have to go over to Oregon City to look at it because you can't see it from West Linn, but there it is, a couple of miles of riverfront. And honestly, it's the project that brought me to West Linn in the first place because there is no place in an urbanized area in Oregon where you can plan 2 miles of riverfront. And what is that going to be in the future? It's an amazing opportunity. But there's so many challenges. Access is a challenge, the industrial infrastructure is a challenge, environmental regulations, all sorts of things are either challenges or opportunities, depending on how you look at them. And so we made a start at this a couple of years ago. The pandemic happened. The mill closed and then reopened, which caused us to start again. But now we are working on this in earnest. The City Council has taken this as a priority and has helped us secure the funds for a consultant team. We're doing a tremendous amount of public outreach. We have guiding principles for this plan that are listed up above: river access, historic character, reinvestment opportunities, transportation improvements. These are sort of a starting place for us to develop a vision for that waterfront. And I think this is one of the areas that we really believe that we're going to be, again, stronger together, working with Oregon City for a concerted vision, working with our tribal partners and with other governments to develop a shared vision for the whole Willamette Falls and Willamette River area. It's never going to make any sense if you guys do one thing and we do a different thing. We see this as a place that in 50 years is one of the most special places in the state. Maybe even in the country. People are going to want to come here. They're going to want to be here. They're going to want to see it. We have a responsibility for shepherding it through correctly. and developing this project as a real partnership. So there's one more slide on this. Just a little bit of timeline. We're developing a vision plan right now. We're looking at the sort of the different districts along the area, and they're probably going to come out with different visions and different ultimate plans. Eventually it turns into zoning. It's probably going to be just about as much as public access as it is about private redevelopment. The other real challenge that we have in this area is the city of West Linn owns almost none of it. It's almost entirely owned by PGE right now. There's a couple of other private ownerships, investment company, and we have, even if you think about our historic city hall that's right there at the base of the Arch Bridge, we own the footprint of the building. We don't own any area around it. So everything we do is a partnership with someone else. So it's a challenging project, but it's exciting. And we would love to come back and share more about this with you if you're interested. Kent, wherever he went. Oh, okay. There he is. He's not listening to me, though. Can we... You've been telling me for a month how excited you were about this, and now... No. Kent, all I was saying is that can we come back sometime and talk about our waterfront vision with Oregon City, with you folks sometime? We would love to do that. There we go. Thank you. That's great. Perfect. So I will say,
When you're done.
What I will say is that our council has been strong leaders and strong partners in this. And that priorities document that we showed you earlier, that is really about how councilors are spending their time. It helps us plan city council agenda time. It helps us understand how much engagement they want and how much participation they want in projects. It's incredibly helpful to us. And we've stuck with it for a couple of years now, so we have consistent priorities, which helps us as staff immensely. So thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you. And I have to just say, on this one area specifically, I am very engaged. This is specifically the area that I started coming to council meetings to talk about, because I started walking down there and maybe doing a little low-key trespassing, don't tell anybody, because there were some trails there that somebody had put them in there. I didn't put them in there, but that I could kind of bushwhack back to see what the creek does when it enters the Willamette there, and see the beavers, which was really what I was wanting to look at, because there was several beaver dams along the creek. And once I got close to the ponds, I thought, well, what's the future disposition of this property, and what's even in these ponds? So I started going to council meetings, and here I am now. So I really stepped in it. So, but I'm really, really excited about the opportunity that this vision offers us, and that the communities can work. And we want to work with Oregon City because I see it as a constellation, actually, of a destination, not just the West Linn side, but what happens in the Oregon City side, and our partnership there, I think, is really, really key. So hopefully we'll keep talking about that. And I specifically wanted to mention that there are several organizations that are doing really important work. There's the Willamette Falls Trust, is doing important work partnering with PGE and tribal representation to have access to the falls open to the public. And there's also the Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Area Coalition doing really important work, applying for National Heritage Area status for 56 river miles, yeah, I think I'm saying that right, from the falls all the way down to near Salem. So on this whole area that will be hopefully attaining the National Heritage Area status, which comes with recognition and potential, of course, for funding. And I can't be remiss in not mentioning the Willamette Falls Locks Authority, which has been working sort of behind the scenes, and a lot of people don't know the current status of the locks, but the Army Corps of Engineers has been doing work and drained the locks this last summer and did some work on the submerged portions of the wall, and that's been excellent. And I recently joined the Willamette Falls Locks Authority, And so I'm really excited about the future potential of reopening the locks, which has a lot of interesting commercial and recreational opportunities that it will present to both sides of the river. I think that's all on that. Do you want to talk about 43?
43. The one last piece that we want to mention in this is we are remodeling our historic City Hall there at the base of the Arch Bridge. The council has dedicated funds from our 2018 general obligation bond. It's an almost $2 million remodel of this building, which was built in 1936. It's going to be a cultural center and museum, and it's operated in partnership with nonprofit partners. And if you walk by there, if you happen to walk by, you can peek in. There's already walls that have come down. There's plywood all over the place. It's a mess, but it's going to look great. But I encourage you to peek in and keep your eyes on that project, and we will have a fun grand opening at some point, hopefully by the end of this calendar year. So we're excited about that project. Real quick, because we do want to get to questions and answers, the other big visioning project that we are embarking on is what is the future of Highway 43 through West Linn? So another area that you all are very familiar with. Get on the Arch Bridge, take Highway 43 all the way to downtown Lake Oswego. One thing that I would say maybe less than half of our residents know is that we don't own and operate that road. That is an ODOT highway. They're responsible for the maintenance. They're responsible for the work on that road. They're responsible for doing it. But we think both the road and the pedestrian, the multimodal, the safety, every aspect of that road could be better. But the visioning project we're doing is not just about the road, but it's about the corridor on both sides of the road. I think you could also drive down that road all the way through West Linn and think, boy, I could imagine this being different and better and more interesting. I could imagine wanting to stop in more places. Our residents could imagine having better access to the businesses that are on there. We could imagine having more residents on that road. It's a great opportunity of a great transit service. We could build more businesses and more homes, we think, over time. So we are embarking, this is another project the council has prioritized, figuring out what is the future of Highway 43. What's that going to look like? Again, thinking of it 20, 30 years from now. What is it going to be? Who's going to be able to access it? Is it going to be a safe facility to drive on? Is it going to be safe to cross? We have these long, long areas where folks have to scamper across the road to get to the other side. It's really not okay anymore. And so we are very proud to be working on this project. There's going to be a lot of community engagement and a lot of business engagement on that corridor moving forward. And another one that you may have an interest on because you use it all. And so we would love to know your thoughts. We have information here. There's a QR code you can scan or hit our website and figure out how to get involved because we certainly want to hear from you as well. We have a lot of engagement coming up in 2024 and we're trying to do things in new ways. We're not doing the same kind of engagement we used to do. Our folks, for example, are going to be at grocery stores standing outside, what we call intercept. Just being there, hey, you have a second for us, that kind of thing. More social media, more creative outreach to find people where they are. And so that's a project that you're going to be hearing a lot about in 2024. So that is sort of what we wanted to cover on some of our priority projects. And then I think Council President and Mayor wanted to talk a little bit about what can we all do together. So I'll hand the mic back.
Thank you, John. So we all are aware of, for one thing, the issue of houselessness and the burden that's experienced by Oregon City because of the services that are available here. And certainly West Linn does not want to contribute to the burden. And so we would like to have conversations and talk about what West Linn could do to partner with these opportunities to help serve people better and help alleviate this burden to Oregon City. That's one thing that I have thought about very frequently, and I really appreciated City Manager Conkle's comments at this last luncheon on that topic as well. And as far as, I mean, any of these areas we could have partnership on, and I'm open to any other suggestions that aren't on a list or that someone might be thinking of. So I'm happy to give it over to Mayor Bialostosky. If you had any closing remarks.
Sure. I mean, definitely, I talked a lot about tolling earlier, but just to highlight that our legislators are working really hard together, and I've enjoyed being able to work with them when working with our other leaders, Mayor McGriffin, Oregon City Commission, to really advocate for our interests on tolling, and county commissioners as well. And I think that's a really strong partnership. And if we were doing this alone, I don't believe we would have gotten the tolling paused to even have more time to delve into the impacts and advocate on that. So proud of the work we've done on that component. And just to highlight, Wyatt Parno's here from South Fork Water Board. He's our CEO. And that's a joint venture between the city of West Linn and Oregon City, South Fork Water Board is. And that's the water provider that makes all the water for our two communities. And so we are interconnected in that way as well. And I'm with, so 3 Oregon City commissioners, and 3 West Linn councilors sit on the South Fork Water Board of Directors. And so we meet every month or every other month and are really working on some fun and exciting projects for the future of our water system. And so that's been a really good partnership that we've had for decades. I'm not sure when South Fork was created, but I know that the last at least 30 years since the partnership between the two cities came in. 1915, okay, so it's been a long, long time. I know the IGA was a little bit more recent, but the company was created over 100 years ago, so glad to be partnering on that as well. So I guess, yeah, we've talked a lot. We're happy to take questions, and welcome back up, Kent, for, yeah, go ahead.
So I'll borrow this. And if I could have the 3 of you kind of congregate over there so our Zoom camera can get all of us in the viewer. And again, if you have any questions, Brian, well, he's walking around now and he'll pick those up. So a quick one, just someone wanted to know how many people actually responded to the tolling survey.
Yeah, so it was a randomly selected, scientifically valid poll that had 600 respondents from across the 3 counties, and it was weighted based on the population of the counties. So 600 total and about even between the counties, but a little bit more for Multnomah because of their population being greater than Clackamas. And the pollsters felt that 600 was a really good number to have a valid ability to be able to extrapolate from the results, and you can also break it down by county and have a valid ability to extrapolate from county by county, because we know opinions on the topic are different in Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas County, so wanted to make sure to be able to talk about Clackamas County voters in particular.
Okay, I'm going to kind of combine 2 questions together. One kind of brings the point home. Rory, share a little bit about the numbers you researched regarding ODOT misleading the public. And I'll go into a little deeper detail. Recently, you filed a public records request to go ahead and access internal documents from ODOT of what the true financial impacts are going to be for the revenue generated versus the cost for administration. I heard those numbers from you when you spoke at Gladstone. Can you share with these folks what those numbers showed you?
Yes, so let's just go back really quick to last November. I sit on the Regional Toll Advisory Committee, which is an ODOT's established committee with several stakeholders, county commissioners, business leaders, elected leaders, and the conversation was about the Abernathy Bridge and how to fund that. So ODOT is trying to generate about $400 million in financing to pay for that project. That's the unfunded obligation to the contractor. So the question was, ODOT came to RTAC and presented how much they would be able to generate in financing. So revenue bonds and a loan from the federal government. And so what I was curious about, they only presented those numbers. It was like, oh, we can generate, in this rate scenario, charging $1, we generate $369 million. In these other scenarios, we can generate up to $469 million. financing. So you go to the bank or your lender and say, hey, we can generate X amount in tolling revenue over 35 years. How much will you give us in financing today? So my question was, over the 35-year period, how much are you charging the residents? That's how much the toll payers will actually pay. And it ended up being that to generate, for example, $370 million in tolling up front, over time people will pay $2.8 billion in tolling. And it, the $469 million figure showed $3.5 billion. After you pay out the debt service, you pay the bonds, you pay all the administrative costs, which are significant. My conclusion was that the big winner is whichever vendor is selected to run the customer service center and answer the phones and send out the bills, because they get hundreds of millions of dollars. I think it was, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but between about 500 million goes to the customer service center, which exceeds the amount in financing we get, basically the return on investment up front. So the thing that we discovered was that the overall cost over time really raises questions about whether it's financially sustainable when people are basically paying for every dollar in financing today that we generate, ODOT generates, the ratepayers will pay between $6 and $7 in tolling over time, which is, if we can find a way, if we can convince the legislature, hey, can we find a way to just generate $300 million from, say, a gas tax increase, a small gas tax increase, or other funding mechanisms, or just taking it somewhere in the general fund, or then we could save everybody billions of dollars, avoid the diversion, avoid all the concerns we have, and fund the project. So, does that answer your question, Kent?
Well, I just remember those numbers when you shared with the rest of the people that were attending that transportation subcommittee hearing, and you were the first person to speak. And I go, that can't be true. It just can't. But lo and behold, this is internal documents that you were able to secure through your public records request from ODOT. So,
yeah, I just want to emphasize that point. The mayor filed. The public records request part of this is the most amazing part to me. It's like, we've been asking for it, they wouldn't provide it. And I think that's really important, and it's a credit to you. Also, you didn't quite hit the point about the overhead. There's a great way you've been describing it. Love it or hate it, the gas tax has an overhead of less than 1%. It's a very low administrative cost. We could raise funds in this region by adding to the gas tax, and I'm not making a policy, but the overhead that the mayor found through ODOT's numbers is between 35 and 50%. It's because you're creating a giant new infrastructure for tolling, which could perhaps be used for other projects down the road, and that may be part of the plan. But if you compare a 50% overhead with a less than 1% overhead, you got to think, how do we want to fund transportation? So.
And the thing about a public records request is that we were asked these questions at this meeting. We were asking, what's the total revenue you're raising over time, things like that. Didn't get an answer, but I realized public records request creates an affirmative obligation under law to provide the records. So that's why I went with that mechanism. But yeah, your point is the key point is that the administrative costs of tolling are so high that does it really make sense compared to the existing funding mechanisms we have, which, by the way, poll a little bit better than tolling anyway. So.
Well, and also, John, you just alluded to some of the funds that are generated through tolling could be used for other projects. I think that's one of the also underlying concerns that we have citizens that use that bridge for residential or for family matters, just to be able to go visit our workplace or friends, family, shopping. But there's no plan to sunset that. ODOT's goal is to change the way we drive through congestion pricing. So once those tolls go in, they're not planning on taking them out, as I understand it. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding. And there's also the component, this regional mobility pricing project, which I talked about earlier. It tolls I-205 and I-5 in several places. One map I saw showed like to go from Wilsonville to the airport on 205 and I-5, you'd pay between 3 and 4 tolls each way. And who knows what the price will be. But those financial numbers have not been disclosed yet. They're in the process of doing the same exact modeling to show different rate scenarios and revenue projections. So we don't know what that's an even bigger, ambitious tolling proposal. And the sunsetting is, I believe it won't sunset. It hasn't been decided. And if you ask ODOT, they would say that'll be decided at the time when it's decided, after the bonds are paid off. But, it's hard to, when you get a revenue stream, it's hard to sunset that.
And I just want to point out who the decision makers are, right? We throw ODOT's name around a lot on this, and if you listen carefully to Kent's introduction, you may have even heard ODOT in my bio. It's true, I worked for ODOT 30 years ago, 25 years ago. They are working under the legislature's direction, right? So the law passed by the legislator was toll the freeway to raise the money for the project. So the people that can change that is the state legislature, and that's part of why we initiated this tolling and a lot of other things, is so that we could go down, talk to the legislators, and make them polling, and make them understand sort of where this has gone since they provided that legislative direction, and maybe there can be a better path. So. Just in case there's any of our friends from ODOT in the room, we know you're doing what you're told, but they're doing it in a particular way that we are not super supportive of.
And one more comment on the legislative outlook, which is that from my conversations that I'm having, it's looking like next legislative session in 2025, there's going to be a big transportation discussion, and I think that's going to be the time where this is hashed out, with our Clackamas caucus providing a strong, opposition to tolling, and we'll see where the chips fall. But I don't anticipate in this short session that tolling will be taken up.
Yeah, I think they only have 2 more weeks left in this year's session, so chances are slim and none that they'll be able to address that. Someone also submitted a little fun fact. If 205 tolling was implemented from West Linn to Vancouver, it would save only 3 minutes. Not sure who has access to that information, but that's shared on the card. We're going to go ahead and change topics here if we can. In an effort to comply with state laws, the city of West Linn developed last year new rules for homeless camping within the city. Can you let us know what those new rules look like or consist of? And have you made progress with PGE on the site on Willamette Falls Drive that the city is presently using for kind of refuse storage, recycling, as a possible homeless campsite in the city?
Yeah, so we set up a task force to recommend a potential campsite and also regulations around the time, place, and manner. So where can camping occur and can it not occur? And we did that last year. And if folks wanted, I can't remember all the policy decisions we made with regard to the ordinance, but things like public parks were not allowed, and on sidewalks, et cetera. And so we're happy to share our ordinance. And city manager's been working with PGE. I'm sure it's been a long process to determine whether the potential campsite could be used or not. So I don't know if you have any updates on that component or what we're thinking.
The short answer is we don't have resolution on that yet. So we do not have an identified place yet in West Linn for that function. We are engaged in discussions with PGE. As I mentioned, they own all the property in that area, and this is one that we have leased for years for a different function. We're trying to see if that maybe could be adapted there should that needs arise, but not yet.
Okay, I just happen to know that location. I've driven by it as I try to avoid the congestion on 205. I'll take the diversion detour and drive Willamette Falls Drive. Okay, shouldn't admit that.
Worst kept secret.
Yeah, worst kept secret. Myself and a lot of other people.
We talked about tolling Willamette Falls Drive for people like you.
All right, recently Governor Kotek submitted legislation to address our lack of buildable land for new housing and the excessive increasing cost of infrastructure. The city of West Linn also recently approved approximately $88 million in tax increment financing or urban renewal funding for infrastructure improvements from the historic Willamette area to the Arch Bridge. Can you let us know somewhat what you plan to utilize that $88 million for to help, because infrastructure is a major component. You mentioned it yourself.
Yeah, so first of all, I don't think we haven't taken out any debt related to urban renewal at this point. We're still in the kind of planning phases. We adopted a plan that did specify, I think, about that amount over time could be leveraged, but we have not done that yet. But so we're still in the community engagement phase related to that process. And I think, two major components for me that are identified in there. One is, it's all related to complementing our waterfront plan that we've talked about earlier, but funding for a potential riverfront park and plaza area, I think, is really important as we develop that area, and if it becomes more developed. And then I think infrastructure funding for Willamette Falls Drive in particular. We have plans of Willamette Falls Drive concept plan that would kind of realign the road to be closer to the riverfront area, I think, and so we have no funding identified for that. So the main source of that would be grant funding, potentially other things we can do, but urban renewal funding could be dedicated to road improvements and probably infrastructure improvements to service potential new development over time. So I know urban renewal is controversial in Oregon City and kind of a long-term play for us at this point. Since we just adopted the district maybe a year ago, we don't have a lot of revenue at this point to dedicate, but we're certainly planning for that potential. And I don't know if our city manager or council president, do you have any thoughts on that? I feel like
Yeah, sure. I think that's definitely the basics. When you create one of these districts, you have to spend the money in the district for infrastructure to ensure development. And so we're doing the vision plan to figure out what the district will look like. As the mayor said, most of the money would probably go to improving the roadways, providing utilities, stormwater, water, all of that, and parks and public areas within that district. That is a really long-term plan. You all know West Linn, we're not the fastest growing community in the world. The way you get urban renewal funding is by development happening, and then you convert that into tax revenue and you spend that in infrastructure and hopefully get more development. So something has to happen in that area for there to be any money at all for us to spend. So it's going to be a little bit chicken and egg, and there really is a long-term plan. I think every city in the region would probably agree with a statement that it's really difficult to come up with infrastructure in advance of development, right? So we are all in this chicken and an egg scenario, and I know there's lots of projects, and Tony described some of them last month. How do you get funding so that you can build the things that people need now, let alone things you're going to need if your community grows? So urban renewal is one of the very few tools that communities have to do that. And this is our first foray into it.
I have a suggestion.
Okay.
Since you have this $88 million of approved indebtedness that you could borrow, conceivably.
We can't borrow it until we have tax revenue to back it up.
Oh, okay.
Right? So there has to be growth in the district. We couldn't get a bond for $100,000 right now.
Oh, because I was going to say, while we're all waiting for ODOT to build the third lanes on I-205, why don't you just expand Willamette Falls Drive, my favorite road to drive to get off of 205, to 4 lanes?
Yeah. Okay. So this is worth talking about, and it's sort of more than a joke, really, because Willamette Falls Drive is probably the single the facility we get the most complaints about, and the most complained about intersection in West Linn is the intersection of Willamette Falls Drive and Highway 43, right? And we have a lot of folks in our town saying, how come ODOT built the roundabout over there and not at the intersection that really had the problems? Well, ODOT is not going to fund that roundabout. So we think there's going to be diversion off the freeway. We think more people are going to take Willamette Falls Drive to avoid the toll and make that intersection even worse. But in the tolling mitigation plan that we've seen, no improvements at that intersection at all. They are asking the city of West Linn to fund that intersection. We're happy to put in our part. The district that was just described probably pay some of it. We don't have the money to build that intersection right now. And we think we need to be able to build, getting back to the point of we have to fix the things that are already broken before we place 100% more load. Their studies show 100% more traffic on Willamette Falls Drive coming up if there's tolling. So we do want to invest in that location. It's probably our highest priority, but it's super expensive.
Believe me, I understand. I'm trying to do a middle housing project down there off of Willamette Falls Drive.
Yeah,
So maybe that'll help stimulate that revenue stream that you need.
Excellent.
Okay, we all know housing, and especially affordable housing, is a major, major issue, not just in the metro region, but statewide. Recently, West Linn was identified as being rent burdened. Not sure exactly what the percentage of people that has to be in order to be rent burdened, but maybe if you could explain a little bit of that to us. But you've been meeting with the Housing Authority for Clackamas County to look at sites that the city owns for potential locations for affordable housing developments. The authority has identified numerous locations that they would allow you to access the affordable housing, Metro's affordable housing bond funds to be able to utilize towards the development of an affordable housing project. Have you made progress in possibly identifying a site for an affordable housing project utilizing those bond funds?
So we've been looking into it and evaluating all the sites that you mentioned, and we don't have a particular update at this time to share, but we've been working on it for sure, because we know that there are resources out there to devote to affordable housing, and I think we definitely want to tap into those, because otherwise, it's, our residents are paying into the bonds just like everybody else. So we're still working on it, but we don't have anything to share at this time about a potential site, but hopefully will in the near future, I think.
And Governor Kotek has an ambitious housing goal, as you know, to increase our housing protection by about 80% from what it is today to 36,000 units per year. And she's also proposed $500 million in this current legislative session for infrastructure, and it got cut back $150 million to $350 million. But she's also proposing that cities can do a one-time expansion of their urban growth boundaries of 50 to 75 acres. In talking with your planning director, he said there's property off of Rosemont next to the Safeway and everything up there that might be a good location. If you were able to do a urban growth boundary expansion, would you support that?
Well, I'm not sure at this point. I haven't had those conversations. What I will say is that protecting the Stafford Hamlet is important to the city, and there's several intergovernmental agreements between City of West Linn, City of Lake Oswego, City of Tualatin, Clackamas County, and Metro. There's 2 IGAs about how the process will be to determine whether that Stafford area will be, potentially, right now it's urban reserve,
right,
so it's not in the urban growth boundary.
Right.
And so those contracts will govern the future of that area. And I think there's a moratorium. Part of it was dependent on the third lane being constructed. And now that that's happened, now that that's been canceled, there's more to be determined on the future of that area.
Yeah, I think
contracts.
it was a 10-year moratorium that the 3 cities agreed to, but you're right, the third lane was a caveat or a component of that intergovernmental agreement. One person just wanted to know, does West Linn have a downtown?
It's funny, I think, I'd say we have 2 downtowns, but definitely our historic Willamette district that we've invested in with our bond funds and made into a walkable, beautiful area for business and community is, I'd say, our main downtown. But then we've got Highway 43 that also has a bit important businesses and neighborhoods. And then we're divided by the hill. So from a topography standpoint, it's hard to really identify one downtown. Then our post office is up on top of the hill by our city hall. So it's hard, yeah. Yeah, so Council President said similar to Oregon City being divided by having a hill in the middle.
Yeah.
So, our city manager was the former community development director, former planner. I don't know what he thinks about whether we have a downtown.
Well, I want to know what the Council President thinks because she grew up here. But I guess most people think of the historic Willamette District, if you had to say a downtown, but we do have these other shopping areas. And I think this is part of why we're doing these two big visioning plans, because we haven't really clearly thought through what are these places and what do they want to be when they grow up, because we do think there's more growing up to come. So should Highway 43 feel like a downtown over time, or should it be a strip mall commercial? I think this is something we want to ask the community and figure out. Are we looking to centralize everything in one place, or are we looking to be sort of spread out? You know, and I wonder, is Uphill in Oregon City, is that a commercial center? You know, do you have an uptown and a downtown like we sort of do? I think there's a little bit of that here. So I don't think we're alone. We're really a community made up of neighborhoods in different elevations and geographic areas that each have to function a little bit separately and a little bit together, is what I would say.
Yeah, and when it snows, getting to City Hall is an interesting little journey and venture. You mentioned earlier the community center that you're visioning now and putting conceptual plans together. And what I've read about it is it may include an aquatic center down the road. But where would the location of the community center be?
Well, right now what we're looking at is a spot just below the Safeway up on, just off of Rosemont, or Salamo, rather.
Okay.
So, but, I mean, the city owns the property already, so that would be a potential site. And
So it'd be close to City Hall.
it would be right next to City Hall, and it would be close to the middle school, hopefully adding to a potential kind of teen center component, youth center possibility, because there's a little bit of friction between the Safeway and the students that get out after school, and some issues occur. So,
Speaking of controversy, what's the latest with Oppenlander Field, Oppenlander Parks, between the city and the Parks Department? That seems to be a little controversial too.
Yeah.
School district, that's right, school district.
That is a controversial matter. Voters approved a bond to purchase Oppenlander, and we negotiated a contract with the school district to do so, and then the contract was challenged in court. And so right now it's set for a jury trial in August. And we are going to, from my perspective, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to negotiate with the school district and come to a positive resolution to retain the property as a park, because I think that'd be best for both governments to not have to go through with that kind of litigation.
Oh, I agree. Nobody wins when you're in courts. Kind of changing subjects here. It has to do with Bike Pass. What do you have anything planned for Bike Pass? Let's see. Are you able to share opinions and thoughts on the Oregon City West Linn bike and pedestrian bridge concept?
Sure. Council President was on the committee that worked on that project, so I'll give it to her to talk about this.
thank you for the question. I was excited about the concept of having a bicycle pedestrian connection, and also potentially, well, there were pros and cons about a location potentially being on the falls side of the arch bridge, concerns with views being disrupted, but also it would make the bridge view from that bridge be really special. So, but overriding all of that, I had a concern about what the interests of the tribes were, and to respect if there were, concerns about placement of that bridge. That would be the first question I would have. But having a connection just generally between the two that's a dedicated connection, I think is a great idea. I know also just generally about bicycle, pedestrian, and active transit. We have it in our plans of the next phases of any of our street improvements. They are having a component of bicycle pedestrian. We've put it in on the Main Street plan in downtown Willamette. We've adding it onto the Salamo Road, which is of course extremely steep and has no ability to walk really along it. So now it will. So we're doing some improvements, but it's a slow process.
In the pedestrian pathway that you built on Rosemont, which gets utilized substantially by the people and the citizens, would you ever add a bike path component to that?
I think there is. The newer section on Rosemont.
Yeah,
that
between
goes-
Stafford and, say,
Oh,
Carriageway.
Oh, yeah. That's a path that bicyclists wanted to have access to, but I think because of how steep it is, and I wasn't involved in discussions of that, so maybe someone else knows more than I do.
Well, since Stafford to Carriageway is not in the city, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's in the county.
So we would be supportive of that. That thing was designed in a particular way. John Lewis can tell you all about the design of this facility, but there's actually rules about cyclists not using that path from West Linn to Lusher Farm, which is incredibly frustrating as someone who would be interested in using it. But you go out on the road, people yell at you. I had a Coke can thrown at me once on a bike on Rosemont Road. Then get on the path, and the path has signs, pedestrians only. So it's a challenge. We do hope to connect various parts of our community better with bike paths. I think it's really important, and you're seeing it more and more. There's people who have e-bikes, right? So the hills in West Linn are becoming less of a factor, and people are wanting to use different ways of getting around. So
Yeah,
definitely of interest.
One person asked if there was a plan to make safer biking on Willamette Drive. I would imagine that's Willamette Falls Drive.
That is certainly our goal. We do have a concept plan for it. We think it's incredibly important, and we think if there's 100% more traffic on it, that ODOT should let us have improvements on that road to compensate for it. That's probably our biggest request, improvements there, and it's probably the #1 facility that people want in terms of sidewalk or bike connection would be Willamette Falls Drive. We're also looking for an off-street trail connection from Willamette Park up to, say, the historic City Hall. That would be the goal, but there's all this PG property and infrastructure, and it's challenging.
Money.
Money? I should note that Bike Ped Bridge, some of us could go on at length about that thing. There is no money identified anywhere for that, right? That was an ODOT project to do a plan. It's not funded at all, so. Yeah. It's because there's no, okay, all right, I'll bite. It's because there's no bike ped facilities on the improved 205 bridge, right? That we thought, okay, continue the trail that goes all the way up to the Columbia River, but no. So that plan came about other ways to cross the bridge safely for bike and ped. Yeah.
All right, we just got a few minutes left. I had the opportunity to ask Oregon City Manager Tony Conkle this question last month. So I'm going to ask each one of you the same question. What do you see as the biggest opportunity that you have in West Linn right now, and what do you see as the biggest challenges in place to achieve that opportunity? Here, I'll let you use my mic.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Well, the biggest opportunity, I guess, for me that I would identify personally is the Waterfront Visioning Project, because I think there is an amazing potential to create something really special, and it's going to take a lot of partnership. It's going to take a lot of cleanup, a lot of funding, and just visioning and collaboration with people, what they want to see there. I have my own personal thoughts about what would be wonderful as far as potentially habitat restoration or enhancement, and a natural area that could bring in ecotourism, and because it's in somewhat of a natural state right now, if you just kind of overlook the industrial waste ponds there. But I think it could be a really special place and also have indigenous presence and access, and so important partners with the community, private ownership, and the different entities that are involved, Willamette Falls Trust, Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Area Coalition, City of West Linn, partnering together on that space.
Great, I would agree. I'll highlight something else, which is, we've talked about earlier, but our Highway 43 vision plan, I'm excited about that, and the ability to potentially have some new zoning, like mixed use, to bring in some housing, plaza space, more public space and increase the ability of folks to be able to safely cross Highway 43. And hopefully through urban renewal, I'm a proponent of tax increment financing. We can someday have funding to do the improvements that ODOT so far has refused to fund for Highway 43. So that's an opportunity and also a challenge just because of the financial realities. And then tolling, obviously is a challenge for sure, and navigating that and trying to convince the legislature in next legislative session to pump the brakes on it and maybe find another way to fund transportation that doesn't have such negative impacts. And then our water system. We're going to get the master plan back. I'm not sure what's in it yet and what the important needs are for our priority projects with our water system, but I know from a budgetary standpoint, the water fund and the 5% cap that we have is really concerning, especially if we have some needs. So we're going to have a conversation about how to address our water system and our budget situation in general, because every biennium, it seems like the last one we were able to get the funding from the federal government from ARPA to offset a deficit, but every time based on our property tax system in Oregon, taxes are really high. The city gets about 13 cents per dollar of taxes. The school district gets a lot. A lot goes to other places, but really the city is pretty constrained from a budgetary standpoint. And so how we navigate potential deficits is the structural issues with the financial system in Oregon also is a challenge and an opportunity to figure that out, and one that takes a lot of planning and time. Not a clear answer, but.
I think that's right, and that was going to be mine. My staff are smiling because they know what I say every time. The biggest challenge in running the organization that I run is our financial realities and matching those realities with community expectations. What I always point out to people, people in West Linn think we should be like Lake Oswego, right? Or that's a common comparison. They get twice the amount of taxes that we do. They have about twice the tax rate. And so a house is the same value in Lake Oswego and in West Linn. The city of Lake Oswego gets twice as much tax dollar from that house. We were frozen low. There's nothing you can do about it under Oregon's tax system. And again, sort of like my comments about the gas tax earlier, you may love that, you may hate that, but the reality is that our community wants services, right? They want things to do. They want potholes fixed. They want the parks to be perfectly maintained. They want all of that stuff. We are really limited in our ability to provide it. So we are always trying to do the best we can, but in running the organization, it's very, very challenging. And the infrastructure is similar. People want improvements. We don't have a great system for providing those, and it's just work that we all need to do together.
Well, we look forward to having you back again sometime soon to give us updates on a lot of these topics we discussed, especially your waterfront master plan. It sounds like that's moving forward. So I want to personally thank, on behalf of the Oregon City Business Alliance, our speakers today, John Williams, Rory Bialostosky, Rory, and Mary Baumgartner. A lot of great information. So thank you. Want to thank the City of West Linn again for being our sponsor for this event. Thank you. And let's see. I want to thank the Abernathy staff for putting together another amazing buffet. If you could give them a hand. They truly go above and beyond our expectations every month, and I especially look forward to seeing what they have for dessert. So if you haven't looked, well, I guess they're gone now, but again, there's still some left. Okay, perfect. So next month, kind of give you a little heads up on what we've got in store for the Oregon City Business Alliance in March and April. Next month, we're going to bring in some state economists, maybe a panel, may just be one or two individuals, but kind of give us an inside look at what's actually occurring in our economy. As we all know, interest rates are being stubborn. They're not coming down as fast as we had hoped. The housing industry is facing some serious headwinds due to lack of buildable supply, lack of a workforce, cost of infrastructure. But where is Oregon situated in regards to these various issues relative to the rest of the country? Then on April 18th, I mentioned last month, for the first time, the Oregon City Business Alliance will be hosting in this facility on April 18th a event called Business in the County. It's going to be a question and answer session with the county commissioners to go ahead and ask them direct questions. What is the county doing? What is your plan to help small businesses, medium-sized businesses? How do you plan to help the community colleges train us for the workforce of tomorrow with artificial intelligence being in the headlines every day now? Hard to know what the job workforce is going to look like a year, 5 years, 10 years from now. But that'll be on April 18th, Business in the County. That'll take the place of our forum for April. So just giving you a heads up. Dan, there's a meeting tonight at the Pioneer Center on the Navigation Resource Center. If you'd like to say a few words about that.
Good afternoon. As chairman of the Homeless Solution Coalition, it gives me a lot of pleasure to announce that we're having a meeting tonight. It's a continuation of our community conversations. And many of you know we're planning to build the Homeless Solutions Coalition, the Navigation Center in the old Mile Fiberglass location. And tonight there's a community meeting, 6:30 at the Pioneer Center. We're going to have a short presentation by Clackamas County on the update of what they're doing and the status of the homeless situation in Clackamas County. We'll make a small presentation on the Navigation Center, and then most importantly, we're going to have a listening session and listen to the public if they have questions or concerns about that. So 6:30 tonight at the Pioneer Community Center.
Okay, great. And thank you, Dan, also for offering the Abernathy Center. For those of you who don't know it, Dan is the owner of this facility. So we're always going to have him on our board at the Oregon City Business Alliance. It's a lifetime appointment. So get used to it. All right, well, I want to thank you. Again, my name is Kent Ziegler. I appreciate each and every one of you coming to our events each month. We try to come up with timely topics that we feel would be of interest to you as citizens in our community. But again, the gray card's on your table. If you want to just take 10 seconds and maybe write one topic down, just one, that you'd like to hear us talk on, then we can start reaching out to panelists that have expertise and a background in those particular subjects. So we provide you the most accurate information possible. So again, thank you. It's a little cold out there. I thought spring had arrived by Saturday. Took my dog. She loved the smell of the daffodils. Ouch. Not today. A lot of snow in the mountains. So see you next month. Thank you.